I'm Shanna Hensley. I'm the principal of DBXL in Kingsport City Schools. We're a program of our high school that's located in Kingsport. And I have with me Antonia Adinolfi, who is our chemistry and STEM teacher, and then Mr. Josh Mao, who teaches Algebra 2, and then our sales math. We're going to start by showing you a short video of what inside our school day looks like. We're built on flexibility, so you'll notice that our facility is wide open and it doesn't have traditional classrooms. And that's an important component to see whenever you're hearing what Antonia is going to talk about in a few minutes.
Today can be different. Different with a purpose, understanding, and relevance. Today, our students will explore, and we'll guide them. Foster their passions. And encourage their growth. Today, they'll work ahead. In the classroom, and in the community. Because this is their school.
Our school. My school.
Today and every day will work for them. So that tomorrow is theirs for the taking. Today.
All right, so at the foundational level of who we are, our program and vision, it's actually built on 4 cornerstones. And it's campus, content, culture, and community. And what we're going to highlight today for you is the community part, where we have strong work-based learning opportunities, internships. We bring professionals into the building as well as sending our students out, and then service learning projects.
So at DBXL, we have 2 certified CTE pathways. One of those is our STEM pathway, which is really going to be the focus of the presentation today. And then our other certified pathway is our digital arts pathway. We use both of these and plug all of our students into both of these pathways, at least through our first 2 levels, so that they're exposed to the work and they can use that throughout all of their courses at DBXL. So they're gaining skills in digital arts that they can actually use in their STEM classes or in other classes outside of the STEM pathway. So our digital arts pathway is a pathway that embeds the Adobe Creative Suite. So by the end of the digital arts pathway, our students have the opportunity to become industry certified with Adobe Creative Suite. They can get their industry certification in Photoshop. And by 4, they're learning animation skills and things like that. So our STEM pathway is part of the advanced STEM curriculum that the state released, that is part of the CTE curricula that's on their website. Our STEM 1 class, is our foundational class. And all of our freshman level students take this course. Our STEM 2 is the application. So in STEM 1, they learn really what engineering design is. Most of them have a little bit of prior knowledge, but they really don't understand how to use it or apply it to solve a specific problem. So we really kind of expose them to that and expose them to career exploration activities throughout. And then when they get to STEM 2, it's more that, it's a little bit deeper. So it's more that application part. STEM 3 is our capstone course, which we are newly certified. We actually received our certification in 2019. So we have not rolled out STEM 3 yet. That is our goal in the fall. So our students will have the opportunity to take STEM 3 or Digital Arts 4. Some may choose to take both of those. And then 4 is our work-based learning. And in that course, students will have learned all of the skills or potentially most of the things that they need to be successful in an internship. So by the time they get there, they would have the option of like really doing something like interning at, in a career or in an industry that they are really interested in, or something that they've kind of worked towards through STEM 1 through 3. So how many of you are familiar with PBL and designing PBLs or things like that, or you feel comfortable? Like on a scale of 1 to 5, with 5 being very comfortable, just kind of give me a hand signal. Okay, all right, so most of us are pretty comfortable with that. And sometimes designing our own PBLs can be very overwhelming, especially for high school, because it is very content specific, and sometimes we really get, you know, if you got state tests, it's very difficult. You're trying to get through and make sure your kids will do well on the EOCs and things like that. So sometimes getting buy-in with PBL or STEM is very difficult. At DBXL, in order to do this and to get buy-in, we started out by coming up with our own template and trying to find a way to integrate STEM and PBL so that we would have more buy-in, but also so that we would expose our students to STEM practices and prepare them for the workforce, especially the workforce in Kingsport. Kingsport is located right where Eastman is. DBXL is located downtown Kingsport, so we have businesses all around us. And it really helps us leverage those community partnerships. So we come up with our own hybrid design thinking / engineering design model that we utilize as in our school, in all of our classes. Students can use this model and apply it in English if it's writing a paper, or they can use it in math to solve a problem. So we really wanted to create this universal standard so that all of our kids would be able to do this, and that STEM would not be isolated just in our STEM pathway courses. So we integrated the science and engineering practices because those are a natural fit with PBL, also a natural fit with STEM. If you're not familiar with the science and engineering practices, they're pretty universal, and these are the things that we wanted our students to be able to do, or to at least do across the board in all of their classes, if not daily, at some point within their 9 weeks or within their semester. And so we are working on actually aligning these science and engineering practices with our model so that teachers who do not teach STEM, maybe they teach history, they can also integrate these in their coursework. Another thing that we try to do, and this is a very natural fit with PBL, is to incorporate the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Is anybody familiar with these? So there are 17 goals that the United Nations have identified as the major buckets for what we need to focus on. These are major issues. And so they took the major problems and set 17 goals that they would like to sustainably achieve by a certain year. And I think the current goals are through 2030, and they're working on those for 2050. You can Google these, but they're a very natural fit for PBL. So if you're struggling to come up with an overarching theme or an overarching question, these are my go-to. I try to align my PBLs with these to give students context and to also let them know, hey, this really is a problem in the world. It's not just a problem here or in Kingsport, but it's a problem somewhere. So through all of this, we also created a universal template that we use for our PBLs. And since most of you guys are familiar with PBL, I'm going to kind of just skim through this, but we found that having a template as a model was very was actually more effective because it streamlined the process for us. And so that this teacher was not using their own model, and this teacher was not using their own, but we have a universal model that kind of helped supported that. So I'm going to talk about the Statewide Design Challenge and leveraging community partnerships here in just a minute, but just to give you a little bit of an infrastructure or a layout of how I set up my PBLs for my STEM classes, I'm going to go through, and this is kind of like my process. I'm just going to explain my phases. I typically have 4 main phases that I go through, and they always start out with some sort of launch or kickoff event, which I bring in a keynote speaker. I try to identify somebody that is tied to whatever problem or overarching question that we're trying to solve, because it does give kids context, but it's also huge for buy-in. And then I kind of introduce the challenge, and then I go through the phases. So research planning, they define the problem. And this is typically the area that students struggle with the most because they don't really know how to research. So I really have to teach them, how do we do proper research and how do we narrow down a problem so that we can actually develop a solution that targets that. Phase 2 is really where the prototyping comes in, and then phase 3 is our revisions, and followed by a phase 4, which is our communicating results. And I typically have some sort of culminating event, whether it be a showcase, just a presentation, like a class presentation. Most of the time, especially with the statewide design challenges, I have a large event at the end, and my students typically present to a panel of judges. And I'm going to talk about that in just a minute. So, how many of you all are familiar with the Statewide Design Challenge? Okay. So, for those of you that are not familiar, the Statewide Design Challenge is something that has been put on by TSIN for the past 3 years. The first year that we participated in was the first year we actually rolled out our STEM pathway, and it was on food security. The second year, it was social enterprise, so kind of like think Shark Tank. And then this past year, it was on infrastructure. So for me personally, it can be overwhelming, again, to try to figure out, like, I didn't want my STEM classes just to be like, every day we do a mini design challenge. I wanted it to be something that was a little bit more, it was deeper. And it was connected with real problems, and they were doing real work. So the Statewide Design Challenge has really given me it was really a way for me it gave me the foundation. It was a way for me to it was a jumping off point. I can't English anymore today, so sorry about that. But it was a jumping off point for me because they gave a digital kit. It had a rubric already in it, and the context was there. I pretty much had to develop the supporting things. I had to find the community partners and kind of put it all together, so plan out the logistics of it, and then support the kids in the areas that they needed. But so typically, once you sign up for this, they roll it out at the end of September, early October, and then it usually goes through March. And so students have an opportunity to do a culminating event in March and apply for regional competition, and potentially advance to state level. So the first year we participated in this, we did a project launch. It was on food security. I found it was interesting how I found this partner, and I'll share that story after the session's over if you would like. But I found a person she was actually the vice president of communications for Appalachia Sustainable Development. They are a company that supports regional farmers and agriculture, and essentially what they do is they help farmers that do not have resources get their products to market. They also provide ways for them to get their seconds, so the Passovers, the ones that grocery stores and things do not want, they help them get those into the hands of people that may need them, or to farmers markets, so that they're not wasted. So I met with her and I was like, hey, I have this project. There's a statewide design challenge and I would really like it if you would be a community partner. And so she loved the idea, and she jumped on board with this very quickly. We set up a launch event. She came in, did a guest speaking opportunity with all of my students, and then we took them. It just so happened that the Farm Expo was happening at Bristol Motor Speedway in our region, and so I was like, hey guys, let's go do this. And so as an engagement piece, we took the kids to the Farm Expo to kind of let them explore different booths and learn about some different things. So they got to learn about grow your own and things like that. So it was truly an opportunity for students to connect with the content and the things that they needed, the experts that they needed in order to be able to design a solution. So we also visited their food hub. Appalachia Sustainable Development had a food hub. So we also took a field trip there and went through several little mini lecture series to get more information. And then we started with the planning opportunities. And I have found that I have to provide support along the way. And you know, most of us know this is common knowledge. I'm one of these, like, I like to get to know my kids first, so I may do a mini project and turn them loose just to kind of see how they think, what they need. And then I'll kind of dial it back. With these design challenges, I walk them through it. They are taking ownership of it themselves, but I do facilitate quite a bit. So they get to explore global issues, what's really happening, why do we have such a high number of food insecurity in our area, and then what can we do to solve this problem. So I brought in a couple, at the Farm Expo, I met some people, experts from the UT Ag Extension Office, and asked them if they would come in and be a guest speaker and help mentor and support some kids, and they loved it. So we had like a little guest speaker series. We kind of staggered it. I also had someone from a farm come in. She does a lot of pollination stuff, and she had a pollinator garden. So through this actually connected students with people that are actually out there. They're really doing this work. They're growing their own food, and it kind of gives them an opportunity to understand, well, there's a lot to this, but also I can do this too. So it was very beneficial, and it also gives them an opportunity to learn from someone other than me. So I'm not just solely delivering the content. So at the end of this, we also had a culminating event, and I think I have another slide on that. Last year when COVID hit, it was a little interesting. And I had the opportunity, I talked to my principal and I said, hey, I know it's COVID, I know we can't have visitors in the building, but is there any way that we can still do this? And so we just kind of had to rethink how we did the Statewide Design Challenge. But it just so happened that this year, or last year, it was on social enterprise. And so we did a Shark Tank event, and that was PBL. And so we kind of had to do some things in a hybrid setting, some things virtually. So we had to figure out how to collaborate virtually. And we were able to do that. And students designed and created a business plan. So a lot of the supporting, I just had to implement supporting documentation for that. But another thing that really has resonated with me is, like, students, we think that they know how to empathize, and in many times they do, but when you're designing for something and you're looking at human-centered design, we have to figure out, how do we achieve empathy? And so through this process, some of the instructional supports that I have put into place has come through a book called Game Storming. And I have this resource at the end of our slide deck, but I found this activity called an empathy map canvas, and I put my students in groups and let them go through this. And so they have to take or walk a mile in their customer's shoes, who they're designing for. And they go through this process of, they have to kind of think, what would my customer do? Or what are those students that are food insecure thinking? What are they feeling? What do they hope? What do they want? And so it really helps them achieve empathy so that they can create better solutions, and solutions that actually matter. So this is just something that I have found that has been very beneficial through that research and planning process. And it actually transcends beyond just bringing in a mentor and stuff like that. And it actually puts them into the shoe of the customer, so to speak. So phase 2 is really about designing and building and prototyping. And students, I have a variety. I have students that want to design and build something in Minecraft. I have students that are like, they have some experience with 3D modeling, so they want to do that, and then some students who are more hands-on and they want to create some sort of physical model. And I pretty much give students choice with that. I will kind of help them, but I am very much the teacher. I will take a risk, and let's try it once. We'll see if it works. If not, we'll fix it. We'll try to figure it out. But so I get a variety of physical or digital models. The one up on the far right is actually a prototype for an app. And it was created by one of my STEM students, or STEM 2 students this year, in something called the Marvel app. It's a way to create a mock-up of an app or a website, and you can actually take it and send it out to people to test it and get feedback before you actually send it to actually produce it. And so there is a feature on there that will actually, if a student really designs something that they want to turn into an app, it will give you a source code at the end and you can send it off to a developer. So it is very real world. And so far, I haven't had as many takers in that. They've been a little hesitant. But that is something that the students have used as a prototype. So at the end of my PBLs, my students, I give them this rubric, but we have like a showcase. And as I said before, we go through this process of they pitch. They pitch live to a panel of judges. They're evaluated with the rubric, and then my judges usually select the top 5 to go on to regional competition. And this is through the Statewide Design Challenge. I have other PBLs that we don't take on this level. I try to scaffold and slowly get to this point so that I'm building skills and really developing those presentation skills. But through this, I really work with them on marketing. And I pull in someone from another community partner of ours called Cumberland Marketing. She is a marketing guru, and she loves coming in, connecting with students, and she will mentor, she'll do guest speaking, she'll serve as a judge, but she is very much all about DBXL and the work that we do. And if you can find a partner like that, I say wear it out. Use them for whatever. But she is really great at giving students feedback, real feedback, and what you would actually see or want in the real world. Because students really struggle with the presentation component. One, they don't know how to design a presentation. I see a lot of students put their speaking parts on their slide, like what they would actually say or what they're going to converse on their slide, and that's what they turn in. So we really have to build capacity for how to really present and design a slide deck. And then actually getting up in front of everybody. To be honest with you, I am an introvert. I very much fake it till you make it. But so I feel for them and I empathize with them when they have to do this, but I am a champion for them because I know that this is something that will translate in the real world, and they will be so much better off if they have this experience now rather than having to learn it in the workforce. But we always have this event. The first year we did this, it was public. So I invited businesses, I invited stakeholders, our community partners. I also invited parents to this event. And it was a great event. COVID hit, and I had to rethink this. Super disappointed, but we still had it. It was closed to the public. But it was still effective. The students still got to learn and get feedback from people that are in the business world, and that was very valuable. So, and this is an example of what happens when COVID hits. You can see we went from the live event to something a little smaller scale. I still had my panel of judges, but we had 2 students that were actually selected last year to go on to state, and they pitched virtually. And then the girl on the bottom actually won state last year. She prototyped a device to cover the stall gap in the bathroom. Yes, because it bothers her, right? And privacy issues and stuff. She was like, this is a problem, especially when you go out of the country. This is a major problem. And so she prototyped a device, and we were so thrilled for her because this girl's story is amazing. And she's come from a family that does not have a lot, and but she's super smart. And part of our Chamber of Commerce, they have a small business group there, and there was a lady that served on our panel and that judged the event that whipped out her purse and her checkbook and said, how much money do you want? I would like to help you get a patent today. And so this was like a game changer for her. And if she wants to do this, there are people with our Chamber of Commerce that would love to help her apply for a patent. So it's just like, it's really all about how can we impact students. And so I said all of that to say this. Sorry. But leveraging Lord, I can't talk anymore. Leveraging community partnerships is a huge part of student success. If we want students to be prepared for post-secondary, we have to provide them opportunities that will extend beyond a state test. And so while I understand that we have state tests, we have them, we gotta love them, even if we hate them. But I feel like that providing opportunities for students that will transcend the classroom is going to connect them with people in the area. It will connect them and help them develop or learn how to be a responsible citizen, but it's also going to teach them how to communicate with one another. How does communication differ between me and you to someone in the business world? And that's been huge. Students don't want to email. They don't want to pick up the phone and call a business person and ask for information. I had a student this year that asked me if they could just send them a text. I was like, no. But leveraging community partnerships is and should be part of the work that we do. We created a CTE advisory board. A lot of our CTE advisory board members are our community partners. Some of them come from the Chamber of Commerce. If you are struggling to find a community partner, that's where I would start, is see if you can't network with someone in your Chamber of Commerce. We are fortunate that they are below us. They're literally downstairs in our building. And so we can go downstairs, I can shoot them an email. They bring people upstairs all the time to tour our facility, so it's a great partnership for us. But if I'm struggling to find someone, my contact there probably knows somebody. And it's very often I go to her and I say, hey, I need somebody that is great at infrastructure, and she will hook me up with someone. So it's not just an advisory board. I think it also is it's a collaboration, but it's a shared partnership. Because if we build the workforce, if we are exposing students to STEM practices and to all of these things that's going to help them in the real world, then we as a whole are building our own workforce. And that's valuable. Because a lot of our students that live in Kingsport have never been out of Kingsport. So they will probably stay in Kingsport. And so we're really building our own workforce and supporting Eastman and BAE Systems and some of the other industries that are there. So community partnerships can also serve as mentors. Through the Statewide Design Challenge, I have brought in or identified mentors, so experts that is tied to a specific field. For example, this year it was on infrastructure. And so infrastructure is very broad. kids were doing things all over the place. I was able to connect some of my students with a traffic engineer because of our parking. We share a parking lot with a medical facility, businesses, the chamber, our district offices. So there's a lot of craziness going on in our parking lot. And so they actually came out, met with students, assessed our parking, our dismissal procedures and all of that, and worked with students to create a solution to improve our infrastructure in the parking lot. And so in addition to mentoring, they can provide expertise. They can also connect with you in the classroom. It is okay to have an industry person come in and be the expert. Sometimes that's how we really extend student knowledge and understanding, or we deepen their understanding for things. And beyond that, exposing them to STEM careers is very important. Many students today think that they can't do STEM because they're not great at science or math. So they will avoid a class because it is STEM. But through the work that we do, like exposing them to practices and things and building capacity for that, and lets them know, hey, it's just grit. We can do this. We can do hard work if we apply ourselves, because it's a process. And that's really what I want my students to be able to get out of this class. So this is just an example of us meeting with some of our CTE advisory board. Because we are small, when we built our facility, we did not have a designated science or STEM space, because at the time, we didn't know that we would be a STEM school, right? It was not part of our original vision. But once we got in the building and we kind of innovated and ended up applying for the designation process, and we've revisioned. So because we don't have a space, we're limited as to what we can do. And this is where I actually worked with a community partner called Streamworks, who had a facility, had all of the equipment, and he had a foundation, so he had money to supply a lot of things. He learned about us through our underwater robotics program, and he said, hey, how would you all like to do a Rube Goldberg machine in your class? He's like, I'll supply everything. So I was like, yes. And so we bus students over to this facility every day during class. It was literally 2 streets over, so we didn't have to worry about logistics and timing. And students actually built a very large Rube Goldberg machine. So 7 teams built their own machine, and then they had to connect all of their machines together into one massive machine. There was a lot of learning, especially even with hand tools. Like, students they didn't even know what a drill was or a broom, to be honest with you. So we kind of had to teach them a lot of that stuff as we went through the process. But this is just another example of, like, there's a community partner out there, because we know that STEM, like, it consumes a lot of supplies. But there is a community partner out there who is willing to help support you. And it's just really up to us to find them. And so if you need help finding community partners, I will help you. These are some of our community partners that we have worked with in times past, and that are great supporters of our program and our underwater robotics team as well. Unfortunately, Streamworks has moved out of the area because of COVID. They lost a lot of their funding, so we lost access to their building. And that kind of, that put us in a little bit of a hard spot, but we're in the process of developing our own space. For that, we've recently purchased an extension, and so we hope that will be open and available for use next year. But we just, like, community partners is huge. Community partners is probably one of the most missed opportunities, I think, for education, because we often become isolated, or we get caught up in, like, it's all about the standards. It's all about the standards. And it is, and we still have to teach them, but I think if we will use industry, we have a potential to really transform student learning and do work that matters, but build the workforce, and not just the generation today, but the generation for tomorrow. So what is the impact? And I think, basically I've already said this, you're building a community. And not just a community of supporters, but you are impacting student learning because you are helping them become active participants in the community and to network. You are almost building their network when you expose them to community partners. So we had an activity, but I believe we're out of time. We out of time? Am I over? No? Okay. So I have actually put this in our slide deck, and I'm going to give this to you all to kind of take home, to kind of think about where you are in your school. What resources do you have available? Maybe what are some strengths of your program? Have you guys ever heard of a SWOT analysis before? Has anybody ever done a SWOT before? Okay. So I actually got this one out of the Game Storming book. I love this book. I actually have one to give away today. But this book has really helped my students go through the engineering design process. It really helps them with the communication and the collaboration piece, and to kind of think through things that they would not really think about as they're designing or creating a solution for something. And so what I would like for you guys to do is, after the session or when you go home and you're reflecting, is just do your own SWOT analysis of your program and see if you can identify what some of those opportunities are for you. What opportunities are there, or what are those weaknesses that you could turn into opportunities? Is there somebody that you know of in your community who is connected that you could leverage and bring them in to a project? And I also have a slide template. So this is actually a Google slide deck. It's also in the folder that I'm about to share with you. So you could plug this in and do this at one of your PLCs or whatever collaborative that you have. So now what? And this is actually your now what. I feel like where we are today is, we've had a high staff teacher turnover this year. I think everybody has had that this year as well. And so right now we're trying to get back to what some of those goals were pre-COVID. And we really just want to focus on some of the same things, but like getting back, integrating PBL across the board, not just in STEM classes, making sure all of our students are exposed and are actually using those STEM practices. So we're really building capacity for that. And also getting back to the place where we can bring our community partners back into the building, or at least do it more effectively. So thank you for visiting our session today. I hope you at least got something out of it, or at least a key takeaway. And I'm gonna, let's see, right here, if you scan this QR code, you'll have access to a folder that has our slide deck in it. The slide deck is actually another QR code, because our district restricts access to some of our slides and things. At the end of our presentation, there's also some resources. I have put some engineering design prompts that I use throughout the design process to kind of help push, push the student thinking and improve their challenges and stuff like that. And also some areas of support that I have had to make sure that I provide my students as they're doing some of this work. I know some of you are still taking a picture. But are there any questions? Yes, ma'am. Shark Tank. Yeah. So students, they had to create a social enterprise. And they had a choice of creating a product or a service. But it had to be doing something for good. And it's actually funny that you say that, because I actually tried my best to get the CEO of Tom's Shoes as a keynote. And I actually made it as far as his personal secretary. And then she said, he would actually love this at any other time, but he can't right now. And I was like, man. But yeah. But that one by far was my favorite.
And what was great about that, Antonia planned that PBL, and then the Statewide Design Challenge came out, and it was a Shark Tank activity. And we were like, how did that even happen? So it just so happened to be the students were already doing the work.
So I just kind of scaled it, like rescaled it to make it fit the Statewide Design Challenge, because I was already doing like the basics. And I was like, oh, well, there's no sense in doing my rubric. I'll just use their rubric. And so that's another thing, is like that rubric is pretty valuable if you're doing the Statewide Design Challenge, because one, you don't have to design your own, but it gives me jumping off points, because I can break it apart and say, this is what I need to make sure that my kids are doing. So that's also very helpful. Any other questions?